Welcome back. Well, opposition among Iraq's neighbours to partitioning the country is universal. Turkey is opposed, fearful of unrest among its Kurdish population. And Turkey fears that a partitioned Iraq would spur outside powers, such as Iran and Saudi Arabia, to intervene. Nevertheless, Iran and Saudi Arabia are also adamantly opposed to Iraq's division. Iran condemned the resolution as flagrant interference. The Gulf Cooperation Council, grouping 6 Gulf Arab states allied to the United States, including Saudi Arabia, says it would complicate an already difficult situation. More strident criticism comes from the Arab League, representing the bloc of Arab states. They describe the ideas as hostile to Arab interests. This evokes Arab fears that the United States is seeking to redraw the Middle East as the great powers did at the beginning of the 20th century. Well, the idea of dividing Iraq came up for the first time after the liberation of Kuwait in 1991. A strict embargo was imposed, banning Iraq's air force from flying over the north and the south of the country. Soon after the war, the Iraqi opposition at that time proposed an Arab-Kurdish federal system with the Kurds in the north and the Arabs in the south. In 2003, a few months after the invasion of Iraq, top Shia leader Abdulaziz al-Hakim and his son proposed a federal province that includes the country's centre, south and Baghdad. Some observers believe division is the last of a series of steps that started with post-war Iraq Administrator Paul Bremer. He disbanded many state institutions, including the army, and set up a parliament based on sectarian quotas. Well, we're still joined by our guests. In London, Hassan Atiyah, head of the Centre of Iraq Studies. He's also founder and director of the Baghdad-based Iraq Foundation for Development and Democracy. In Washington, Patrick Basham, founding director of the Democracy Institute and an adjunct scholar with Cato's Centre for Representative Government. Also in Washington, Phyllis Bennis, director of the New Internationalism Project at the Institute for Policy Studies. Phyllis Bennis, if I can come back to you, one of the parts of the plan is that it calls for help from the neighbouring countries. At the moment, they're being blamed in many quarters for actually fomenting some of the problems there. And a lot of them have actually said they're not interested in this plan. So what would be the advantage of trying to get them on board?
I think there is no advantage to trying to divide Iraq. The United States is the outside intervener, if you will, in Iraq. It's not the neighboring countries that are the main problem. The main problem, if you listen to Iraqis themselves, they are saying that the occupation is the problem. In the most recent poll, just before General Petraeus came onto Capitol Hill, it was 47% of Iraqis say they want all the US and British troops out immediately. Another 35% want them out within 2 years. So I think that's where we have to start. The reality is that Iraq is one of only 2 countries in the Middle East that has a millennial-old history as a nation state, as ancient Mesopotamia. The only other one, ironically, of course, is Iran. All the other states were created by imperial powers, by the French and the British in the 1900s, in the 1920s. And Iraq has a history. Not exactly the same borders, no. And the question of the Kurds is a separate issue. The Kurds have been embraced and then abandoned by outside powers, whether Turkey and particularly the United States, over and over again. But the notion that you could divide Iraq, if you look at just the city of Baghdad, which holds something close to 1/4 of the entire population of the whole country, Baghdad is thoroughly integrated, or was before the last, say, 12 months of chaos and violence, has been thoroughly integrated even within families. So the notion that this is somehow a natural division between what should be a Shia area and what should be a Sunni area simply is not based on reality.
Patrick Basham, one of the criticisms of this idea is that it, as you know, was stated there, is that actually you could entrench sectarian division rather than actually healing the wounds by separating out the parts.
Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is, or perversely, perhaps the good news is, in a strange way, that the integration that Phyllis is talking about, which certainly was the case in Baghdad, particularly at the time of the invasion and the beginning of the occupation, is largely, if not gone, then certainly heavily reduced, because there has been so much ethnic cleansing going on in Baghdad particularly, and there has been so much, for lack of a better word, voluntary movement of people. Iraqis have voted with their feet out of desperation, out of fear. And so you have Shiites moving to neighborhoods and areas where they feel safer, if not completely safe, and Sunnis doing exactly the same thing. Therefore, any such division would, as she says, not be simple, and it wouldn't be clean, and it wouldn't be very convenient. But it does offer up at least the hope that if the forces battling one another in Iraq, the sectarian forces, are more separated than they are today, that they will find it that much harder and have less incentive to do harm to one another on a daily basis.
Hassan
As I say,
can I just bring Hassan Atiyah in on that specific point? He's Patrick Basham is saying that the solution offers hope, as he put it. Is that what you think?
Believe me, I'm sorry to say, this is a very simplistic approach to a very difficult problem. If the situation calm in Iraq, stabilized, and then negotiation between them, and they decide on partition, that's another story. The country is in a state of chaos and fragmentation. Who will hold the election? Who, on what basis you will decide this is to Shia or to Sunni? Which authority will take responsibility in dividing the country? Who will sponsor it? These are the real problem. In addition to that, the reaction in the Arab side of Iraq, whether Shia or Sunni, and Christian, and Assyrian, and Turkmen. And by the way, Iraq is not only Shia and Sunni or Kurd. Iraq is a mosaic. There are plentiful of minorities. What about them? What about the Assyrian? What about the Christian? Are simply to say that let them try to find one way or to live here or there? No, this is a very, very simplistic and really very dangerous ideas. Once you simplify a big problem into mere two words, divide them into three segments, it doesn't work. Because even now, which is the Iraqi find it, those who were fighting each other now, whether Shia or Sunni, all of them condemn this proposal. And if the people are not happy with it, who will force it? The American forces will come and force it.
Patrick Basham, let me bring you in on that. I mean, is this a simplistic solution, do you think? And is this more about American elections, people trying to come up with something that they can offer us, you know, we've found a solution for Iraq and now we can move on? Is that what it's about?
Well, on the latter part, I mean, you're absolutely right. There is certainly an American political aspect to this. You know, every one of the candidates' debates here, the candidates are each asked, what will they do about Iraq? And Senator Biden, the principal sponsor of this Senate resolution to partition Iraq, has made something of a name for himself by at least having a concrete proposal. And obviously his political agenda, you know, influences his thinking. And yes, this is a fairly simplistic proposal. And I'm not here to suggest it is the ideal one or that one couldn't come up with enough time, a better one. But what I would suggest to your guest in London is that the situation in Iraq is so far from ideal, it's not funny. It is so tragically, it's so tragic today, and so many people have lost and are losing their lives that we can't simply say there are problems with this proposal and therefore we can't look at it any further. We have to view it in comparison with the status quo in Iraq today. Okay. And that status quo is pretty deplorable.
Phyllis Bennis, you threw up your hands. Just very briefly, we're running out of time.
The state of chaos in Iraq is the result of occupation. There are 4.2 million Iraqis that are now refugees, 2.2 million inside Iraq, 2 million outside Iraq. Dividing Iraq into 3 arbitrarily selected areas is going to make that worse. The question is, what do Iraqis want to do? The U.S. has to get out and allow them to do it.
Okay, I'm afraid on that note we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed to our guests Hassan Atiyah and Patrick Basham and also Phyllis Bennis. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you very much for watching this edition of Inside Story. We do welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us, insidestory@aljazeera.net. For the time being, that's it for the team. Bye for now.